Okay, no one else will say it, so I guess it's gotta be me. Bob Belcher has a problem with success. But I think the problem is that we've been seeing Bob as a businessman and restaurant owner when he's actually an artist who just so happens to be bad at business. One of the biggest hurdles and stresses for Bob in the show comes from trying to keep his family restaurant afloat and successful. But what is success? That's obviously a pretty loaded word, but for the sake and context of this video, when I refer to success, I'm defining it as the combination of financial stability, growth, and reputation in traditional terms. While this provokes differently for different folks and their different strokes and their inside jokes, this is a basic understanding that is held in contemporary circles. With this working definition of success applied to Bob, his history with it is definitely a struggle and sometimes a downright failure. To credible business majors, Bob is probably viewed as a failing or heavily flawed businessman. Bob's failure to achieve traditional success in the show isn't a flaw. It's more the outcome of his lack of choosing to compromise his artistic integrity and practice for more practical business strategies and techniques, which is something I think practicing artists could benefit from, changing their perspective on failure and learning to find meaning in small successes, compromise, and why Seth Goodwin's notion on the practice is imperative to being an artist. And that's why Bob Belcher represents a version of success that isn't about scale, it's about meaning, because Bob isn't a businessman, he's an artist.
No, I do.
No, you are an artist. A beef artist. A beefartist. A poet.
Every artist has their own medium, and for Bob Belcher, it's his restaurant. Bob's Burgers is a traditional American mom and pop style burger shop, but how Bob runs it reflects his artistic style and what he's passionate about and finds important in his business, but more importantly, his practice, similar to an artist in their studio. For one, let's look at the Burger of the Day chalkboard, one of the show's background visual gags that features Bob's special burgers utilizing various puns and wordplay for each burger he makes that reflects the burger's specific ingredients. Similar to how an artist names a piece once it's finished, albeit Bob finds humor in puns and wordplay on pop culture and phrases, such as, "Where have you been all my life burger?" "We're here, we're queer, get used to it burger," "The bet it all on black garlic burger," "The running out of time burger," and who could forget...
I'd like to recommend the burger of the day, the If Looks Could Kale burger. You get it?
Mm-hmm.
Well, you're not laughing. I don't think you got it. If looks could kale.
Yeah, I got it.
So my point being, Bob's naming of his burgers to me is not far really different from the artists in their studio naming their work. Another aspect about Bob is his adamant use of buying special high-priced ingredients for his burgers. Any avid watcher of the show knows Bob is a frequent visitor of farmer markets and sometimes high-end stores to curate very special and specific ingredients for his burgers. While this is no different from other restaurant owners gathering their ingredients and supplies, the way Bob treats it is a little more special and feels more reminiscent of artists gathering their supplies. Now that we're seeing Bob through a more artist lens, we should acknowledge some of the hurdles he faces when it comes to success. Hurdles such as struggling to pay rent,
We haven't always paid our rent on time.
We never pay our rent on time.
competition with Jimmy Pesto, poor foot traffic, constant financial emergencies, and never getting the recognition he wants. While these are all fair and frustrating, sometimes the biggest hurdle to Bob's success is Bob himself. So if you boil it down, the reason Bob isn't more successful is Bob. His food is good, he has the corner on burgers in a seafood town, and he's versatile in how he cooks. All, great things, but his stubbornness constantly gets in his way.
Sweet potato fries are too sweet and they're stupid and I hate them. Have you tried regular fries, anyone? Because they're delicious and they have the perfect combination of crunch and saltiness and
Bob, we know how you feel, but just for the record, you asked me to order 50 pounds of sweet potatoes, right?
Yes.
And we're gonna add sweet potato fries to the menu, right?
Yes. Because apparently we have to make these trendy fries so the list people will like us.
Let's look at James Poplakovich, better known as Jimmy Pesto. Jimmy Pesto is quite the character, but he is a fairly successful businessman and restaurant owner. Multiple times throughout the series, we see his restaurant packed with customers, high foot traffic, steady income, the kind of success that even puts him in a position where he considers taking over Bob's lease and turning it into a gift shop for his own restaurant. Pesto is great at hopping on trends, capitalizing on moments, advertising, and staying in the public's mind. That's what makes him more popular and more financially successful than Bob. However, popularity and financial success doesn't necessarily equate to good quality. Pesto's food may not be the zenith of culinary excellence, but he understands the market, he knows how to navigate it, and that's the key difference. Bob is more of an artist than a businessman, and that's exactly why he gets in his own way. Bob rarely, if ever, follows trends or leans into gimmicks. He could compromise like Pesto and other restaurants do, but Bob often refuses or self-sabotages as he's more dedicated to his craft and his practice, but that dedication makes him stubborn to a fault. In Season 6, Episode 15, Pro Tiki Con Tiki, Bob's rich friend Warren visits and offers to invest in the restaurant. While on the tacky and gimmicky side, Warren brings some avant-garde ideas for interior design and business growth. However, Bob realizes he doesn't want to compromise his vision or answer to anyone else, so he returns Warren's $100 grand. $100,000? What is he, stupid? No worse, he's an artist. A normal small business owner would jump at an investment like that, especially from a trusted friend, but Bob won't compromise. Bob wants full control. This is his vision, his baby, his practice, and he wants to do it his way. You know, clear cut. So, editing me here, I want to also say that we can learn from dozens of episodes that highlights Bob's business flaws, such as his artistry impairing his ability to adapt, his anxiety about failure affecting his decisions, and his tendency to ignore advice, even when it might be helpful. But I want to highlight a specific episode that I feel like shows all these in play. In the season 13 premiere, To Bob or Not to Bob, the building next door, usually just a rotating gag in the opening sequence, like The Simpsons, American Dad, or Futurama, is suddenly available for rent. It doesn't take long for Linda to suggest expanding the restaurant into the neighboring space. And thanks to the Mr. Fisholder A plot, and the fact that Mr. Fisholder's low-key in love with Bob, the Belchers get a window of opportunity to try the expansion without worrying about rent, so long as they help with Mr. Fisholder's play scheme. During the night while dreaming, Bob is visited by a ghost which is portrayed as a manifestation of his own consciousness. In the dream, we see just how on the fence Bob is about expanding. But he is also obligated to it for Linda, for the business, because it's what people do. It's the logical next step.
Come on, Bob. Don't you want to be a business lion like my dear old papa?
I mean, I am kind of already a business lion. I have a restaurant.
Yes, you do. Yes, you do. But it's so small. It's so slow. That's more like a business snail.
It is a little slimy in here. This part is. Anyway, I'm not sure what that is.
We really see how Bob's anxiety and uncertainty causes him to second guess and overthink opportunities to the point of self-sabotage. He even gets a glimpse of a possible future where their expansion is working. The Belchers seem to be thriving, things are running smoothly, and Bob even has more hair. But in that same vision, successful Bob gets too busy and neglects a single burger on the grill, it burning in the process. Bob reacts almost passively to the success of the expansion, like, oh, cool. But the burned burger? That's what gets to him. The idea that he would have to sacrifice attention to his burger craft, his medium, in order to be more successful terrifies him. It's not a compromise he's comfortable or willing to make. Bob is a simple man and an artist, fulfilled by how he makes his food, regardless of whether he's a business lion or not.
Got him now.
I can't take it anymore. I don't want to expand the restaurant.
What? No.
What's happening?
I'm not a business lion. I already love what our restaurant is, and I feel like I have everything I want, and I don't need more.
Aw,
Except money. We could use a little more money.
So when you lay it all out, it becomes clear Bob isn't failing at being a businessman, he's succeeding at being an artist. However, Bob's failure holds a deeper artistic truth, one that every artist could probably learn from. Seth Godin is a worldwide recognized speaker and bestseller writer whose work leans more towards that motivational self-help kind of force. In his 2020 book, The Practice, Godin goes through his very optimistic, infectious, and easy reading style and offers ways of thinking that argues creativity isn't some kind of a mystical gift placed on a pedestal, but more of a consistent, disciplined practice, one that involves courage, trust, and the willingness to share one's work despite the fear and internalized self-doubt, while also learning to not fall into the fool's game of chasing external validation.
How to juggle. So what I do is I say, this is going to take about an hour, and it will not take less than that. So here we go. We're going to spend 20 minutes throwing one ball and not trying to catch it. Throw, 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 throw. It drops on the ground, we pick it up. And then we're going to do it with the other ball. Throw, throw, drop, drop. So half an hour into it, we've done throw, throw, drop, drop over and over and over again, which means that you are now really good at throwing. And if you're good at throwing, the catching takes care of itself. And we live in a culture that rewards people who lunge, that rewards the emergency save. But that's a mistake. What we need to do is reward the throwing and not worry about catching. Get the throwing under control. If you learn the practice, you'll be amazed at how easy it is to catch.
I highly recommend picking up this book if you're a creative of any kind or if you're just interested in becoming more creative. In it, Godin frames art as journeyous work that creates change, while the practice is about showing up consistently to do the work. And shipping then becomes this umbrella term for sharing our work in ways that feel authentic and applicable to the medium at hand. And while I'm sure there are a handful of art philosophers and that one art history professor who lived for raised hands mid-lectures would absolutely have some choice words at the idea of anyone defining art in a monolithic terms, but for now, let's just roll with Godin's definition and treat art and work as synonymous.
Shipping creative work. If it doesn't ship, it doesn't count. You're allowed to have a hobby, but this isn't about your hobby. This is about the change you make. And creative means it might not work. It's something that only you could do. It means that we can't get a computer to do it and we can't hire someone on Fiverr to do it. And work, because it's not your hobby. It's hard. It takes emotional labor. It's better than digging a ditch. It's better than cleaning a latrine for sure, but it's still work. And we're not allowed to whine about the fact that we have make-believe writer's block. We have to simply show up and do our work.
Another appreciated way that Bob contributes to the practice is with the Burger of the Day board. While there are a handful of episodes that revolve around the board in some way, it is understood Bob typically creates a new burger to highlight on the board every day. If we exclude big US national holidays, when Bob would realistically be closed, like New Year's Eve, Thanksgiving, and Christmas, that leaves him making a new burger of the day for about 354 days a year. That's 354 burger puns, that's 354 Teddy visits, and that's 350 times Linda goes,
All right! Right! All right! All right!
All right.
All right.
Did it just say all right?
All right.
All right! All right!
I'm exhausted.
I don't think Seth Godin and the practice are expecting or demanding that creatives need to create something brand new every day. It's more about showing up, doing the work, and building a routine around it, and learning to deprioritize the need for perfect outcomes that appease the masses, and instead strengthening one's relationship with the creative process and work that we make. Lost in this obsession with outcome is the truth that outcomes are the result of process. Good processes repeat over time, lead to good outcomes more often than lazy processes do. Focusing solely on the outcome forces us to make choices that are banal, short-term, or selfish. It takes our focus away from the journey and encourages us to give up too early. The practice of choosing creativity persists. It's a commitment to a process, not simply the next outcome on the list. We do this work for a reason. If we triangulate the work we do and focus only on the immediate outcome, our practice will fall apart. And of course, this sounds good to the ears and makes you feel good deep down inside, but baby, you can't fill up on sugar. The practice is also realizing that your work is not for everyone, but that's okay. Bob's restaurant takes place in the fictional town of Seymour's Bay, New Jersey, and like many East Coast locations the show draws inspiration from, Bob operates in seafood territory, making his burgers niche and doesn't really appeal to mass trends of the territory. But that's okay. Bob's work is personal, niche, and most importantly, sincere. While he occasionally and often reluctantly dips his toes into appealing to the masses or chasing trends, a pen I will address later, he always finds his way back to his practice, wanting the genuineness of his work to be the reason people come to visit the restaurant. Our desire to please the masses interferes with our need to make something that matters. The masses want mass entertainment, normal experiences, and the pleasure of easy group dynamics. The masses want what the masses want.
Tiki's not stupid, it's fun.
Of course you'd say that. You're stupid too. You're all stupid.
Hey!
Sorry, I didn't mean that. You're not stupid. But you didn't come here for the food. You came here for the tiny umbrellas and the talking pineapple.
I love that pineapple.
And that's a really dumb way to choose a place to have lunch.
While Bob is usually good at staying steadfast in his practice and artistic integrity, he isn't above falling into the joy-killing trap that all artists can't seem to escape: comparison. And when it comes to Bob, that comparison usually comes from one source. Care to guess who it is?
Who's that Pokemon? It's
Jimmy, so-called Pesto of Jimmy Pestos.
Like I mentioned earlier, Pesto is successful by conventional commercial metrics, but Bob has a lot of pride and confidence in his practice, but that confidence is always shaken when he compares himself to Pesto. While some of Bob's concerns are entirely warranted, like meeting his bottom line so he can afford rent and keep, the business afloat, his comparisons are a trap that feels embedded and especially tricky to navigate within the artist's dilemma. So, when looking at Bob through this different lens, it becomes natural to see him as an artist with a track record of choosing craft over commerce. But with that comes an embedded artistic dilemma of art versus commerce. While the term artistic dilemma feels contemporary, it's a descriptive phrase shaped by centuries of criticism, philosophy, and discourse used to capture the persistent tensions creatives tend to face. At its core, the artist's dilemma feels like walking a tightrope between personal creative integrity and the need or desire for commercial success and financial survival. It tends to often include the fear of selling out or compromising artistic values for money or mainstream notoriety, and the tension between pursuing art full-time and maintaining stability. This is something that every creative has to wrestle with, and in Bob's case, he prefers staying in his own lane, headstrong and unwilling to compromise his artistic integrity by cutting corners or sacrificing quality to increase profit.
I mean, when I think back on when we started the restaurant, we didn't have 2 nickels. But what we did have was a promise we made to our customers and ourselves.
Oh boy, here we go.
That we'd never compromise on quality. Never, 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 ever.
So sometimes then?
No, Gene, never, ever.
It's easy, almost a knee-jerk reaction to say you never compromise your artistic integrity, but it's important to also know and acknowledge the emotional weight that comes with that choice, such as chronic burnout, persistent imposter syndrome, acute blinding comparison, and of course, who could forget prolonged internal conflict between financial stability and creative freedom. Like Bob, I'm an artist. I'm a director, graphic designer, and photographer. Follow me on Instagram and Visco if you like cool, meticulous visuals and photography, but that's enough of the self-promo. But Also, like Bob, I'm very stubborn and a little stuck in my ways that have made potential growth and contemporary success very limited or far in between due to my stubbornness and personal sense of artistic integrity. It's super easy to compare myself to contemporary creators that I see on places like Instagram and feel a sense of resentment due to one-sided illusion of, and sense of entitlement, but does that sound familiar? But the thing to absorb from Bob's Burgers are Bob's little wins and the compromises that comes with that. Bob is already blessed with some stuff that he sometimes takes for granted. His family's support, a regular customer who gets him, newer customers who genuinely appreciate his burgers, as well as potential opportunities for the success he claims he wants. Because Bob isn't someone who never gets opportunities, he's someone who keeps getting them but quietly turns them down, reshaping them, or self-sabotages in the name of doing it right. But it's hard to ignore some of his more successful endeavors that come from Bob compromising what he wants and loves with the more Jimmy Pesto-esque patterns. While originally a mess, when Bob decides to do brunch in season 8's Brunch Squatch, we see his restaurant packed with enthusiastic people, mainly ready to drink bottomless mimosas. While their first endeavor was messy due to Bob and Linda not having a mandatory meal minimum, this is something that could easily be fixed, tweaked, and improved upon to do again, as well as being on a schedule where they could actually make money to fund their ingredients and, importantly, their rent, so that Bob isn't always at the whim of Mr. Fishholders offering him a free month of rent to do something nonsensical for him and a horribly disguised method of spending time with his man crush Bob. But in the episode, we see Bob is ecstatic to make brunch food and to do something a little new, so this compromise is something that can totally work for him. You know, if the show wasn't fixed to a sitcom status quo to keep the characters charmingly realistic and aspirational. Another success compromise we see Bob partake in is in season 11's Romancing the Beef with the fine dining pop-up experience Urge, which business-wise and artistic integrity-wise was a total success. While you can definitely criticize and discuss the actions of taking advantage of desperate last-minute couples who didn't make proper reservations, you cannot overlook the demand and lucrative potential Louise's idea had, all the while still being in a soft area where Bob didn't feel uncomfortable or creatively restrictive in the kitchen. We can see how excited he gets from the idea of a prefix menu. If Bob is talking to the food he's making, it's usually a good sign that he's happy with what he's making. Under the right circumstances and some tweaking, Bob could do really well if he compromised on certain aspects to meet customers' demand while not necessarily sacrificing the most important aspects to him as a cook. So tying this back to the artist's dilemma, I think it's a bit myopic to view artistic integrity in a strict duality of art versus commerce, but compromising might actually be a way for artists to have their cake and eat it too. Because art and artists exist across a multitude of forms and mediums, it ultimately becomes a personal question of what each of us is comfortable compromising on. Bob is stubborn, self-sabotages, emotional, owner of a family restaurant hanging by a strand, but he is also creative, principled, disciplined, and dedicated to his practice. While Bob could find more success by improving his business, like raising his prices, leaning more into trends or events, and using more creative marketing, I think the focal point of Bob's Burgers is about trusting the practice. It's about shifting our perspective and priorities away from success and towards small wins, compromise, and most importantly, the meaning we derive from being artists and engaging in our craft. I think we as artists often feel like failures only because we're using the wrong metric. Bob's Burgers is a nice reminder of what actually matters. So the question that was success versus failure becomes something more important. What are you willing to compromise when it comes to your practice and what you love? Yeah, that's all good and fine, but these bills still need to be paid. So if you ever see me hopping on trends or taking sponsorships, just mind your business, keep your head down. Yeah, so that's it for me today on Bob Belcher versus Success. I'm a huge fan of Bob Burgers, like the other Bob. Wait. What are the fans of Bob's Burgers called? Bobites? Diddy Committee? Yeah, you know what? Actually, I like that. Yeah, let's just go with that. Like the others in the Itty Bitty Ditty Committee, I stay rewatching Bob's Burgers, and this was a topic I've been wanting to talk about and kind of unpack for myself, but I haven't really seen or people analyze it or talk about it in depth, so I thought I would take a whack at it. I feel the most like Bob in the show, but every character is great in their own way. But I would be lying if I said Teddy doesn't try my patience in waver on annoyance with just how extra he is. But I know there are a lot of Teddy lovers out there, so I'm trying to tread carefully. This is not the time for my long-winded Teddy rant. So it's been a few months since my last upload, but I had some transitional life stuff happening at the beginning of this year that needed, my full attention. But I'm in a better place navigating it now. So yeah, like, comment, subscribe if that's what you're into. Also, comment your favorite Bob's Burger song down below, and I'll see you next time when I sit and talk about whatever I happen to be hyper fixated on. All right, peace.